Juneteenth refers to June 19, 1865, when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation reached Texas, and the people that were there that were enslaved learned that they had been freed 2 years before, and it commemorates and celebrates the end of slavery.
We're standing at Custis Square, which is the 4-acre home lot that John Custis IV established in the early 18th century. John Custis was one of the wealthiest people in Virginia in the early 18th century, and he chose this area to set up a house and a garden. And the garden here was supposed to have been one of the most ornate gardens in the country in the early 18th century. John Custis owned over 200 enslaved individuals. Most of those people were living on his outlying plantations where they were engaged in raising tobacco as a cash crop. However, some of those individuals were here at Custis Square in Williamsburg. We have a couple of named enslaved individuals who were working on this property. There was a man named Anthony who was listed as a gardener, so we believe that he would have been here. There are a couple other named enslaved individuals, which include Peter, who we believe was a personal servant to Custis. Then there was Alice, who was a woman that John Custis had a relationship with.
For Juneteenth interpretations, I got to portray a woman named Alice.
Alice shows up in the documentary record in a handful of places. She shows up as a name in lists of enslaved people when they're taking censuses of the different plantations.
We know that she was owned by John Custis IV. She was probably one of maybe 200 to 300 people that he owned by the time of his death. And we know that she has a son, or had a son, named Jack. Historians believe that Jack is noticed and remarked upon because he perhaps was the son of John Custis IV.
John Custis really fell in love with this child, at least based on what we're reading in the documentary record. Custis freed the boy at the age of 9. And in addition to freeing the boy, he gave his own mother, he gave Alice to Jack to keep. We're really fortunate that we have people like Deirdre who can bring those stories to life. You know, we as archaeologists, we can talk about here's a stain in the ground, here's what it means, and here's what it all looked like, and this is, you know, a person's labor. But at some point, we have to stop. You know, the data only takes us so far, but when we can turn it over to our skilled interpretive staff here that then fleshes this out, I mean, literally fleshes it out and brings it alive. Oh man, it's really powerful. It's really powerful to see that in person. It's really powerful.
So when I was trying to get into imagining how to portray Alice and how to bring her story to life, I used what was there, which was her name, the fact that she had a son, the fact that legally she didn't have ownership over her own body, and that the condition of her child was transferred to him because of her, legally. I wanted to really use Alice to explore some of the themes of Juneteenth, looking at legacy and looking at this idea that her son was given something that she wasn't able to give him. Even though his mother was enslaved, she still had things to teach him. And so trying to explore some of her desires and some of the things that she maybe wanted and maybe some of her disappointments was really a lot that went into my interpretations for Juneteenth. On a daily basis at the foundation, I get to portray enslaved people, enslaved women, and some free blacks that lived with very limited freedom. And getting to dive into Alice's story in particular, with her being a woman who is, like most of the women that I portray, very little is known about her and very little is remembered. For me to be able to be at Custis Square and standing in that field where they're beginning excavations and remembering this woman who at the time of her life probably never imagined that she would be thought about, much less remembered. It was a very humbling experience to try to tackle interpreting her story, and to be able to share it was a real privilege. because it was almost like it was a little bit of a reparation, a little bit of a commemoration, but also a celebration. Like, one of the things about Juneteenth is that it is not only a commemoration and a celebration, but a big part of it is learning from the past, is self-examination and making sure that we do better. I think there's a great opportunity for healing, and I'm looking forward to Colonial Williamsburg continuing to be a part of that.
Anthony, Alice, Peter, those individuals, they never knew freedom. They died long before emancipation. They never knew freedom. So to celebrate it and to point them out and to bring their stories alive on that day, and really for all days going forward, it's a way for us to honor them. So Juneteenth out here is a way to show folks, what you see around you was, shaped by enslaved people.
But at this time, we're seeing more of a looking back and people wanting to better understand where we are, where we've come from, and I think it's all in hopes that we can make a better tomorrow. And I think that's all that Alice would have wanted, for Jack. That's all that any enslaved woman that I portrayed wanted for their children, was that maybe their children knew something better than them. Maybe their children knew something better than what they did. And that's probably for any mother ever that ever lived.